Sveiki visi šiandieną susirinkę į paskutinę mūsų ciklo paskaitą. Pavasarinį Naujasis Existenzminimum architektūros kokybės klausimai. Kaip ir ankstesnėse paskaitose mes kalbame apie tai, kaip reikės mums sugyventi vis glaudžiau būriantis klimato krizės akivaizdoje. Tos poveikį jau jaučiame ir mes Lietuvoje. Kol kas švelniai, bet ateityje gali būti vis ryškesni. Ir jeigu mes įsivaizduotumėm tos dešimtis milijonų žmonių, kurie lieka be vandens, be maisto, be nieko ir pajudės į tuos kraštus, kurie dar gali išgyventi, tai iš tikrųjų mūsų bus žymiai tankiau. Tai paakino inicijuoti šį paskaitos ciklą. O šiandien finalizuojame ir kviečiame pasiklausyti Carles Baiges Camprubí paskaitos Architecture as a Platform for Sharing, architektūra kaip dalinimosi platforma. Ir žodį tai perduodu Matui Šipšinskui.
Sveiki visi. Hello. I will maybe just quickly repeat some things in English, but just in case. So it's the fifth lecture of the series, the new Existenzminimum, Questions of Architectural Quality. And it's nice to have such a series. In previous lectures, we heard about the origin of the idea of minimum, about the experiences of different architects and urban planners while they were working with the small spaces and interesting various scenarios. And today is the last lecture, yes, and lecture Architecture as a Platform of Sharing, and we will discuss cooperative housing architecture. So for me, it's an interesting topic, and I think it's interesting for Lithuanian architects as well, since our housing stock is quite homogeneous. It lacks alternative typologies, I think. And I remember my experience working in Netherlands with Grande Paris project. So there we were exploring different options of shared spaces, co-living units, and cooperative housing was a strong influence to us. So I'm really glad that we have this lecture for Lithuanian audience. And it's a great pleasure to hear real experts of the topic, LACOL. Maybe quickly about the speaker. Carles Baiges, so he's a Spanish architect and urban sociologist, one of the founders of Architects Cooperative LACOL. LACOL is the winners of Miss Van der Rohe Prize in 2022. He studied architecture in Barcelona School of Architecture, Open University of Catalonia, and his projects and research are related to citizen participation in architecture, urban planning, and cooperative housing. He co-edited numerous publications and currently teaching in different universities. So probably without further ado, let's move to the lecture itself, Architecture as a Platform for Sharing. So Carles, please.
Good morning, and thank you very much for the invitation. I really hope that I can help with the questions that you're mentioning that you're facing, and I hope we can give probably a different perspective on the topics that you mentioned, that you've seen before, and I hope I can also share the specific approach that we have on the matter of housing and alternatives to housing, alternative typologies, especially related to maybe not so conventional ways of managing a housing and having access to housing. So I will share the presentation. My idea with the organizers is that I talk for an hour and a half or so, and then I really want to give enough room for questions, because I will cover different topics, and I know that many of them might be new for some people, so I really want to give enough space for the questions that can interest you the most. So I should be sharing the screen now, I think.
Yes, perfect.
Okay. So first of all, well, you already introduced myself, but I needed to also explain you a little bit who we are. So not only we now focus a lot on cooperative housing, but we as an architectural office, we are also organized as a cooperative, a workers' cooperative. We were founded in 2009 as a collective, as a group of students from the university. But since 2014, we work as a cooperative, as a professional office. Now we are 11 members that we are also workers, plus we have 3 employees and now 3 students as well. The idea is that we didn't want to replicate the hierarchical, more traditional way of organizing architectural offices, where you have 1, 2, 3 partners, and then a big group of employees and trainees and internship, but then they don't get all the credit, all the recognition, all the opportunity to participate in the direction of the office. Here, even if now after 2 years, we have some employees and some students, the idea is that there's always this way of progress where they can become members of the cooperative as well. So indeed, we are a non-profit organization. So there's a limit for us. We cannot, even legally, we cannot have lots of employees and very few owners of the company. Like at the moment that we grow, we are forced to incorporate them as members, or at least to offer them the possibility to become members. This hasn't arrived yet, but I'm sure it will arrive soon, because now it's 2 years that we have some employees in the office. So as I mentioned, we started as students from the university, renting a small space to work our projects from university. This was in the ground floor of an existing building facing the street, a street that was pedestrianized just right after we got here, in the neighborhood of Sands, which is a neighborhood very like working class, very historically connected with where you could find a lot of unions and left parties founded here, or even now squat houses or cooperatives. So we got here just by coincidence, but we connected very well and very fast with neighborhood associations that the moment they knew that we were students of architecture, they came to us to ask for advice for different projects they had, or urban problems that they had. And after that, we started collaborating a lot with them. And that's why also we decided to create a cooperative, because we learned from other cooperatives and we saw that this was a way it matched our standing point on the office organization. Anyway, this was a place where we did at the beginning our projects for the university, and when we were finishing, we also saw that we had not only friendship but also a common point of view, where we saw architecture also as a political tool. At a moment when we started, it was when we were studying in the faculty, it was the economic boom in Spain. So there was a lot of work for architects, and many of the time it was not very critical, and not very just following the flow of money. So we realized that this was not something that we agreed, that we thought that architecture could do something different and could be also helping going on the more social and environmental questions, and not only following the path of money. So when we finished, it was actually during the economic crisis. So half of the people of the collective left to other countries because there was no job opportunities here. But the ones who remained, we decided to stay and to open an office following our ideas. And then 3 years after 10 years being there, so in 2020, we moved to this new space that we share with 9 other organizations from social economy. So we have different activities. We are here on top of the sign, but below us we have a library, a bookstore. We have lawyers, we have a magazine, we have music producers, we have software engineers, a restaurant, a concert venue, an NGO, and all of them, they are cooperative or foundations or NGOs. And we all share this factory that we renovated. It's a building that is listed, it's heritage, but we managed to intervene in a way that now it's also a very sustainable performing passive building. So this is where we are now, and it's kind of a showroom for us to show our approach to heritage, to sustainability measures, to sharing. There are those different buildings that we renovated, and then we also added a little extension here. So all this space is open. So if you come to Barcelona, you're welcome to come and visit us. Just look for La Ciutat Invisible, and then you will get here. And well, this is probably one of the most iconic pieces of the building, where we use these intermediate spaces between the different buildings to use it as a place to heat the air in winter, and also to put the intermediate spaces of the offices, like the kitchens and the stairs and the toilets and so on. But well, this was just a little introduction, but what I wanted to focus today is more on cooperative housing, which now became most of our work. Like probably we are dedicating 70-75% of our time and resources to cooperative housing. La Borda was the first building that we did of this type, and the one that became more popular. And people, probably most of you have seen some images of it, and because they became for a moment they became everywhere. And this is what people know and what it's more visible. But I wanted to stress that this is also, there's a lot of things that are behind that are invisible and that are important to get there. No? So this was a 7-year process, very complex in all terms, in terms of organization and human level, starting from a small group of people and then growing until now, where there are 60 people on the organization who live there, but also now manage the building. On the legal and finance development, because it was very innovative at its time. It was the first of its kind in Spain, the first to get special financement as well. And also in the thing that I will focus more now, but on the questions, if you have questions, I can also go more into the legal and finance aspect or on the social aspect, but I will focus now more on the architectural aspect. But also it was a little bit more complex than conventional collective housing, and I will explain a little bit more now. But just for you to understand that this was a 7-year process, from the very first meetings to people moving in, So it was a long process where we needed a lot of commitment from different parts. Just to give a brief definition, because I will be talking about cooperative housing. Sorry about the misspelling. But here in Spanish or in Catalan, we normally say cooperativa de vivienda en cesión de uso. We have to add this idea of grant of use. We had cooperative housing in Spain for decades, especially in the 70s. But the cooperatives here, there were only to make the development, the construction. So people got together, they made the development as a cooperative in a way to avoid the middleman, no? the money that was taken by the developers. But then when the building was finished, they divided the property and became owners of each flat, and they dismantled the cooperative. So here it's the first after 2010, we saw the first cooperatives of where the cooperative stays and the building is owned by the cooperative. There is no subdivision of the property. The cooperative is self-organized and democratically organized. It's not there is a third entity that manages the building. All the management stays in the cooperative, and the tenants, they all share the same responsibility and the same possibility to intervene in the organization. And then what the people who live there, what they have is the right to use a unit. Normally it's a right that stays forever. Normally it cannot be transferred to anyone else, not even to the daughters or sons if they die. So when you don't need anymore the house, you give it back, the right to use it, to the cooperative, and it's the cooperative who decides who moves in. The idea of this is to make it permanently affordable, that there is no possibility for anyone to make profit of it, to resell, to sublet the apartments. You only have the right to use it as long as you need to use it and as long as you fulfill the requirements from the cooperative. This is something fairly new in Spain and Catalonia. In 2016, we only had one project that was existing, and it was in the rural area in private land. But after 2018, we saw the first projects in private land, in public land in the city, especially in Barcelona. And now we have several projects, I will show you later in a map, both in private and public land, both in urban and rural areas. But just for you to see that even if it's still something very, very minoritarian and it's just a drop in the sea, in Spain we have 80% of owner-occupied, 20% of rent, and only 1% is social housing. So we are very behind on countries like Austria or the Netherlands. But even if we are very far behind, we managed to grow quickly, no? And we have all these, what you see in gray are units that are under development, meaning that they are under construction, or at least they have the land or the building already. And the ones that you see in black is where the units where people is living already. That's for the region of Catalonia. So this is in case of Barcelona. We have now 19 projects. 16 of them, they are in public land. 3 of them, they are in private land. This is obviously because in cities like Barcelona, the land price is very expensive and very limited. So we rely a lot on the support from the government. Otherwise, it's very difficult to make these projects affordable. When you see the what happens in rural areas or in smaller cities is the other way around. Most of the projects, they are in private land. The cooperatives, they are able to buy themselves because the land is cheaper. And what you see in Barcelona also, and also in the rural areas, is a mix of new buildings, new construction, and renovation of existing buildings. I marked in orange the projects that LACOL did or is doing, and what you have on the different color dots is the way the land was acquired. So the blue ones are the 3 of private land. The other ones are public land, but we saw different ways of delivering the land. So the La Borda and Princesa were the first projects that were kind of an experiment for the municipality. So they were transferred directly to the cooperatives because there was no other cooperative that were prepared to do the development. And when the municipality saw that this was a possible, feasible development, they did some competitions of land, asking for groups to present ideas. So it was not an architects competition. The groups had to go together hand by hand with architects and lawyers and economists, but it was the groups who bid it for the project, for the land. And lately, what we've seen in purple is that the municipality made an agreement with the Federation of Housing Cooperatives, and it's the federation who decides to which cooperative to give the land. Well, all this is, I can go also deeper later if you have more questions, because we can talk more on the role on the government's role in cooperative housing, but I don't want to go too deep now into that. This is some data that we gathered this year. We were doing some research on the projects of Barcelona for an exhibition. We have now these 7 projects where people is living already, and other 12 that are under development. We see a variety of sizes and prices and units. What we see is that we are also doing fairly small projects because the land that we are able to get is what it is. We would like to be like bigger projects, because when we are doing smaller projects, we see that there are some basic costs that make the project very difficult to be affordable. But for the moment, we have to work with what we can get. So we have from very small to starting from 5 units, and now the biggest is one of the projects that we are doing. It's 40 units, but we think the 30 units is a good number to have a good balance between affordability, but not such a big project that it's also difficult to have a social cohesion and that you can know your neighbors and work in a good moment. No? These are just side by side some of the floor plans of the different projects that we're doing, so you can also see the variety, but I will go more into detail of some of them. I will first explain more in depth La Borda, because it's where we experimented some of the ideas that then we replicated in other projects, although in each project we always incorporate some innovation. La Borda is located in Can Batlló, which used to be a very big and important industrial site in the neighborhood of Sants. That it was for decades, the neighbors were asking for the municipality to turn it into a park and into public facilities. So it was a very long process that it exploded in 2011, where the community finally got to get into the factory that used to be private. So finally, the owners gave one of the buildings to the municipality, and the municipality gave it to the community. So since 2011, the community has been managing this, what you see in red here in the map. And it's from there that there was a group of people who were concerned about access to housing, and they wanted to develop something related on housing, but that was following the same ideas of self-management. So after negotiating with the municipality, they got this piece of land that you see here on top, that was already dedicated to social housing. So the municipality, instead of doing it themselves or give it to a foundation, which was the most usual way of doing it, they decided to give it for 75 years on a leasehold to the cooperative. So this is still owned by the municipality and controlled by the municipality who moves in. It's social housing. So the people who moves in have to fulfill 3 requirements, which are you cannot own any other property. You should have been living in Barcelona for 2 years, and there's a maximum of income. This is the moment of the groundbreaking ceremony, which was obviously, as you can imagine, a very exciting moment for the community. And for us, these type of projects are very interesting for many things. I will focus on those 3 today, starting with the involvement of the user, which is something that is very uncommon in collective housing. You can have the users in individual housing, when you have a family that comes to you for asking for their private individual home. You can have user participation sometimes in public projects when they want to engage the community, but in collective housing is something that is quite uncommon. Here we have a group of people from the very beginning that we can engage with them, and we can discuss, and we can study how they live now and what are their desires. So this is something very unusual in collective housing, but that we think this explains some of the outcomes that are different from conventional housing, because we have the opportunity to discuss and to see the real needs of the community. It's also important to notice that cooperatives are independent organizations, and they are the ones that hire professionals like us. So they are really in control. If they don't like what we are doing, they can eventually even fire us and hire another architect. So it's not fake participation. They have completely control of their project. So we do a lot of workshops from the very beginning, from asking references, asking how people imagine how they want to live, and from we do a parallel process of what you would do as an architect in your office, looking for precedents, for references. We do that together with the community until and we take all the decisions, or some of the decisions, we take them together until the very little detail. And in some cases, like it was in La Borda, that depends also on the skills and the will of engagement that the community has. But in some cases, we even engage them in construction process. La Borda was not all self-constructed; there was some parts self-constructed, and even in the maintenance. Normally these communities, they also take care of the maintenance of their buildings. So there's always a commission of at the beginning architecture, and when the building is finished, they turn into maintenance. So there's a group of people who are more empowered and more controlling what's happening in the building, what needs to be fixed, what needs to be improved. So it gives you a completely different scenario from conventional collective housing, where, for instance, they don't care about the maintenance until something is falling, and then it's maybe too late or you have to spend a lot of money to make a renovation. Here, it's very interesting for us because the relation and the solutions that you can apply are very different from conventional housing. For the same reason, because you know who's going to live there, you can also study and see what's the composition of households or income or other issues that I will show you later. No, and here, for instance, we saw something very interesting is that now it changed a little bit, but the moment of moving in, there was only one unit from 28 that resembled what you might think is the traditional composition of a family, you know, like mother, father, 2 children. That was only one of 28. All the rest were different living arrangements, no? And what we see in Spain is that more than 50% of the households is people living alone or 2 people living together. But still, we produce both social and private housing, very large apartments with a lot of rooms, because this is what the market demands, or what sells better, or what sells more expensive, even if it doesn't match the reality of our households or the variety of living arrangements and how people live, no, like adults living together, not because they are poor, just because they want to live together, even if they don't have a relationship, no. So we wanted to accommodate all this diversity. This also allowed us to make a redefinition of collective housing, you know, what means collective housing. And we think it's not just a collection of individual units on top of each other, no. We think it can be something different, especially if we work with a community that it's already that has some social organization as well. So what we do in this type of projects is we question to the people what housing is, no? Because we also sometimes we just think on housing like, oh, this is the place where I go to sleep, and then I'll take a shower and sometimes cook. But there's a lot of things going on in housing, no? There's a lot of things related to work, related to safety, storage, to taking care of oneself, taking care of others, meeting with others, storing things, storing vehicles, and things that are maybe not 100% housing, but they're related to housing, like energy, mobility, economy, health. All these things they collide with housing, and they're intertwined with housing. So we make a process of asking people what they think on housing and where do they want to do these activities. Is something that they want to do completely individually, something that they want to do with their household, something that they can cluster with other households and they can do with 2, 3, 4, 5 other households, something that they can do together with the whole community, or it's something that maybe they don't even need in the building because it's already present in the neighborhood and that's enough, no? So we take all these activities and we make this exercise of placing them in the different spheres. The idea is to go from this conventional housing layout where you have everything solved in your individual house, and then the common spaces are the bare minimum as possible, no? Like that you have the staircase, you have the elevator, you have the machines, but that's you try to reduce that as much as possible because it's not useful spaces, it's not spaces that you can make profit. From that scheme, we go to this other one where we reduce the surface of individual units because we put some of this space in common and we share these spaces. From the studies that we did this year with the projects in Barcelona, we saw that on average, the projects are putting 10-11% of surface in common. No, like in the case of La Borda, it's roughly 3,000 square meters, and we have 300 square meters of spaces that we share. But that depends on the size of the project and also depends on the intentions of the community. So you see here on the bottom left, this project Can 17. It's a senior co-housing project. So it's the people above 50 years old who decided to live together the last part of their life when they don't have children living at home anymore. So the units can really be very small because it's always going to be people alone or couples living together, and they wanted to share a lot of spaces. So here we have almost 30% of shared spaces, but in other projects depend on the site. The smaller projects, they have less opportunities to share, and the biggest, they also have more, they are more efficient on the sharing spaces. What do these projects share? That depends on the community, on their needs, on their aspirations. So we have a variety of uses and spaces that are shared. In the case of La Borda, what we see is a laundry, a big kitchen and dining room, multifunctional space, bathroom, terrace, the lobby, 2 guest rooms, parking for bikes, storage, and the patios. The reason to share, first of all, is for economy and sustainability and efficiency. So now, instead of having 28 washing machines, 1 for each unit, we just went for 2 industrial machines that you see here in the image that are more efficient. They perform better. You need less materials, you need less space at home for something that you use 1 hour a week. So we think it's a better use of resources. And the community, something that they were very scared at the beginning, because in Spain it's very uncommon not to have your own washing machine, and it's something that 100% of the people says that they will never go back to their previous situation, that they are happy how they're using it. And something that another reason to put this type of services and activities and spaces in common is all these everyday activities that are related to care, like cooking, cleaning. Normally in more conventional housing, that this is changing also in housing typologies, but we saw that there was a tendency to put all these activities in the worst spaces of the house, like spaces that didn't have natural light, that didn't have views, that were very small, where only 1 person can fit, and where, because of our social organization, this was still undertaken most of the time by women. So here the idea is to put all these activities in better spaces that have natural light, that are very visible, that you can see who is doing the activity, that more than 1 person can do the activity at the same time, and even that you can do more than 1 activity at the same time. So it's very common in La Borda that you do your laundry with your child, because when you go to the laundry machine, it's next to the multifunctional space that is mostly taken by the kids now. And then when it's finished, you go upstairs to the terrace, where there's also some swings and some garden, so that you can also do this activity with your child or the family all together. This is the ground floor, where the patio, where you have the communal kitchen and dining room. In that case, this is not like the washing machines. This is something that we still have in each apartment, also because the law requires us here in Catalonia to have a kitchen for each apartment. So here, even if the family didn't want to have a kitchen, it was not a possibility. But what the community wanted here was to have smaller kitchens and dining rooms at home, because just adjusted for the everyday uses, and then a bigger place for when you have guests at home and you want to host a bigger dinner and so on. And this space now is used once a week, every Wednesday, there is a communal dinner with the whole community where you can go down and eat with your neighbors, and then you can book it during the rest of the week for your own personal events. This is an image from last month where there was a big lunch with 2 other housing cooperatives from the neighborhood that came here, and there was a big lunch here. This is the multifunctional space, the multipurpose, that it's mostly now taken by the kids. And then at the end of the stairs, in this door, you have 2 guest rooms. That actually is one of the communal spaces that is most used in the building, that is almost always 100% used, because it's very useful for a lot of people who are not born in Barcelona, and they have families in other parts of Spain or Europe or even Africa now, and they can invite their visits and not have them at home, and not have at home a guest room that is only used every 3 months. No, so this space is we always, that when we do new projects now, we always encourage them to have this space, because we saw it's very popular. And then in the ground floor, we have a retail space that was rented to a food co-op that was existing in the neighborhood already. So there was an arrangement made so they can stay here with a lower rent, but also because this is a service for the community as well, that they can get their food in the building already. No, so all these spaces are something that we call sometimes like communal luxuries. No, these are spaces that none of the people who live there with their salaries could get at their house, but this is something that you just need every now and then. It's not something that you need every day. So if you get together with other people, you can have access to these spaces and services that are kind of a luxury. So the only way that you can have access to this is getting together with others. And we also rethought not only the communal spaces, but also the individual units. We also tried to make housing that is more adaptive to the different scenarios that you face during your lifetime, no? And the different households compositions, as I was saying before. So we have, in the case of La Borda, 3 typologies. The smallest, they have 40 square meters. If you add 1 extra room, you have the medium, which is 60 square meters. And then if you add another room, you have the biggest that have 75 square meters. They all come from the same base, these smaller units. And then it depends if you add or not rooms, you get the other typologies. And the idea is that there is flexibility because in terms of management. So for instance, now there was already, after 4 years, there was 1 unit that people left and it became vacant. So the first people who had the right to move in was people from the community itself. So there was another unit that transferred to this unit that was vacant, and the one that was offered outside of the community was this unit that they were leaving. No, so there is this possibility to move inside of the building that normally you don't have in conventional, either if it's rent or owner occupied buildings. No, it's very rare that you can move within the same building. But then we have also this possibility to change these rooms, that if you don't need one of these rooms anymore, you can give it to the apartment living next to you. So all the structure, from the physical structure to the plumbing to the legal contracts, are prepared to give these rooms in very few days to one apartment to another. So here what you see is a medium apartment, because they have this basic unit here plus this room. If they would have this room here, this opening here, they would have a big apartment. If they don't need this room anymore, they can close this with a drywall, and you can remove the drywall here and give this room to the apartment next to you. And another thing we did is a less hierarchical layout of the apartments. So what you have is, instead of seeing the floor plan and seeing, oh, this is the master bedroom with the parents' bedroom, and this is the children's, and this is the living room, you have spaces that they have more or less the same size, which is 16 square meters, more or less, that you can close or not, that you can divide and define as a living room or as a bedroom, the way as you want. And then what we have fixed is the bathroom, obviously, which is always on the same spot. And around this bathroom, you can place the kitchen at your will. So this allows us to have all the different combinations, with different typologies, the different placement of the kitchen, the possibility to close or not the spaces. You can. There's been a lot of people who close this big opening and put conventional doors, or close these spaces to make smaller rooms. So we have 28 units that come all from the same matrix, but they are all different because everybody adjusted to their needs and the people who live in the unit, and so on. And the last point is the sustainability aspect. We see here also a lot of opportunities to experiment with more what we call strong sustainability. So not just, let's say, greenwashing. It's not just putting solar panels and that's it. But here we can implement a lot of passive measures, but also a lot of decrease the growth ideas. So when you come, if you come to visit La Borda, depending on the season, it would look very different. On the left, this is how it looks in summer. On the right, this is how it looks in winter, because with these wooden blinds and with the width of the balconies, we play a lot with the sun. We let or not the sun getting into the building. We have a very good location because the building is facing south. So this let us play a lot with the sun, and with that we managed to that the 24 units that are facing south, normally they don't need to use heating in winter. And obviously we're in Barcelona. This is not super cold. I guess that at your homes, it can, in your places, it can get colder, but we still have temperatures around 0 in winter, and we can manage to keep the houses inside 20-21 degrees without using the heating, just with a good use of the balconies and of the ventilation. The balconies obviously was also a demand from the community, because we do have a quite good weather here. So these are extensions of the house that are used 9 months of the year. On the other hand, when you see the facade facing north, this is facing it's a small street, but it's very polluting, very noisy, and we only get like half an hour of sun the maximum day. So here we place the communal spaces, the commercial space that I showed you before, and only 4 of the 28 units that they also face, all the spaces on these units, they face also the inner courtyard. This patio is covered with a greenhouse, which is the only part of the building that is automatized mechanically. All the rest is depending on the user using the building properly. So this is the patio that it was also a very important for the community. This is This comes from references that the people brought at the very beginning from a typology, a very popular typology in the central and southern parts of Spain called corrala, where you would have poor houses around a patio. So here, all the units and all the communal spaces, all the entrances, they face this courtyard. So the idea is that the moment that you get out of your house, or maybe you're in your room and you see people using the communal spaces. So it's not that architecture is gonna make everybody a friend of each other, but at least it gives you the opportunity to meet your neighbors, no? So it's not like in conventional housing. Normally when I lived before in more conventional housing, I would get into the stairhouse or the elevator and go straight to my apartment and not meet anyone else. And I could have been living 5 years in a conventional building and not meeting half of my neighbors. Here, the idea is at least architecture helps you to meet with others. Then it's up to you if you want to talk to these people or not, but at least you have the possibility. And well, these images, I'm sorry, because we still, we always say that we need to go and take new pictures, because these pictures are from the very beginning. Now, all these open corridors that you see are full of vegetation and things, and they look very, very, and a lot of banners also hanging. So they look very different. And this is the greenhouse. As I was saying, is the only part that it goes automatically. It has sensors of temperature, light, smoke, and wind. And depending on these variables, it opens or closes on winter, on summer, on different. No? So it has also these shades to prevent sun to come in summer. And it helps us to have this intermediate space where we recommend people to ventilate their houses, no? Because it's a space that normally in winter is more hot and in summer is a little bit more cool. This is a moment of one of my colleagues is explaining the tenants how to use the ventilation of the units so that the performance is better. And all this importance into the performance of the buildings, it's not only because people and we believe in sustainability, but it's also going back to the beginning because we knew who was going to live there. We also studied how they lived in their previous apartments, and we saw that there was a lot of cases of energy poverty situation, even if people were not aware. No, we tend to think that because we have very soft winters here in Barcelona, the thing is that most of our buildings are not prepared for that, and now also they are not prepared for the hot summers that we are hotter summers we are facing. So we see more and more a lot of people living in a situation where they don't have comfort at home, and they live in a very hot or very cold environments that are dangerous for their health, but that they cannot solve because of economic reasons. So they are in situations of energy poverty. So the idea of giving a lot of comfort with passive measures was also related to try to give more decent comfort without depending from energy. Now we've been measuring 6 of the units after 4 years, and the last year we were doing some studies and we could prove that all these units, they were in a comfort situation without using, most of them without using heating, and there's also no AC or any climate for summer. The only thing is fans that people put in the ceiling. And with that, we could prove that these units, they spent half of the price on energy supply, than an average apartment in the area. And another measure that we implemented in terms of sustainability is to try to use as less as possible. So because we knew who was going to move there, we knew that people had, most of them, they didn't have a car and they didn't intend to have a car. But there was a regulation in place in Barcelona, and I think it's in most Western cities, that forced any new building, any new construction to have underground parking. In our case, we were required to have a parking spot for each apartment. Together with the municipality and with the political parties, we convinced the city hall to change this regulation, and because of sustainability measures, because also we proved that there was already a lot of parking space in the neighborhood and in the city, and because we proved also that this was making a short cost on social housing. No, we saw that it was like a 20-25% increase of the cost of social housing because of parking, even if we know that especially people living in social housing, they tend not to have a car in Barcelona. So we managed to change this law, and La Borda was the first building in Barcelona not to be forced to build underground parking. And finally, we also spend a lot of energy and resources to make the construction as sustainable as possible. So La Borda became at the time the tallest wooden building in Spain, only with 6 floors of wood. So as you see, there was not a lot of tradition in building on wood. In this case is a CLT, contra laminated timber, that came from the north of Spain. And even if it was more expensive than conventional construction with concrete, the community was very committed to the sustainability aspect, and also we could save some money with the reduction of times. We did this structure only in 6 weeks. Each floor was done in a week with only 4 people and a crane. So it was a very, very quick construction. But obviously, the sustainability aspect was very a key decision, a key thing for the decision making that was done together with the community. This was for La Borda, and now the last time that I have remained, I wanted to show other examples of other projects we did afterwards, and where we applied some of the learnings and some changes also from what we saw it worked better or didn't work as well in La Borda. This is the second project that was finished 2 years ago in the neighborhood of Poblenou, a former industrial neighborhood that now is being renewed and also gentrified. So here is a smaller project. It's 19 units. It's in a smaller site. There was no possibility to make the patio in the middle, although the community really liked the patio in La Borda, but the plot didn't allow for that. So here we played a lot with the circulation, so that you see that the first 3 floors, the corridors are open to the street, and the last 2, they are open to this side that faces a high school. So because of the acoustics, but also because of sun, we decided to change to make a mirror on the floor plans to protect the houses from sun or from views and acoustics from the high school. So these corridors become the same time corridor and balcony for the units. There's in each floor there's around 4 units, and they also, again, we play with the wooden blinds to protect from sun. Here, some of the learnings that we did, we applied differently from Laborda. In the case of Laborda, it's a similar project where we work with wood. There's a lot of communal spaces, but what we saw in Laborda with the communal spaces is that they are very inside of the building. It's impossible to detach the communal spaces from the individual houses. They're all connected. So we have these big communal spaces that sometimes they are not used, and there were discussions whether or not to make some agreement with organizations to use it the moments that they were not used for hosting meetings, or the kitchen to be used for doing catering during the mornings when people is using it less. But the community rejected because they're very connected to the houses. So people goes there with their pajamas to do the laundry, and they don't want to meet on cross a group of 30 people they don't know, because the moment you open the door of the street, you are already into people's houses. So even, for instance, now we do normally 1 or 2 visits a week with people, architects, but also especially with people who want to make other projects. And there was a long discussion on how to do these visits, because it's very invasive. You're really quick in invading the privacy and the domesticity of these spaces. In the case of La Palma, some of the shared spaces, like the guest rooms, and there's also a workspace, this is more private. But the kitchen that you see, the communal kitchen and dining room that you see here on the right, we have this possibility to open it from the street while closing the access to houses. So there is this possibility to offer the space for other organizations in the neighborhood to meet. And this is happening already. Here you see also you'll see the mirroring I was telling you with the exterior corridor. And then we gave a lot of importance to this and a lot of dignity, a lot of detail to these communal spaces, because they also become meeting space. They become part of the house, and people is fairly happy with this. There was always, when we explained this project, there's a lot of questions on intimacy and especially when they come and visit this project or Laborda, there's a lot of questions on how, for instance, the doors, they are made of glass. So what happens with privacy? And well, the thing is that it's very easy to place a curtain and to close the curtain if you need. There's moments where you need more intimacy, but people is very happy with this, having more opportunities to meet their neighbors. Especially people who live alone, elderly people. They express that they change a lot their loneliness, and they feel way more supported by the community when they need to ask for help. So all these mechanisms change a lot their approach to housing. Again, in the case of La Palma, there was supposed to be an image that changes, and I don't know why it doesn't move. So I cannot show you here. I can show you again on the floor plans. Again, we played with this less hierarchical design, and here I think we managed to work better on the possibilities that these apartments have, even if it's a little bit more rigid, because the kitchen is always fixed in the middle, but it allows you for more possibilities of making a living room that goes side to side, or to close and to have more rooms. So here, I think that it was also the possibilities of the plot, but in these terms, probably works a little bit better than in La Borda. And here again, we also work with wood, but here I can go also a little bit more in detail if you're interested. But we change also the construction details so that the wood performs better than it does in La Borda. Here also we apply passive as much possible measures. We also have geothermia. In all the cases, we have collective heating managed by the cooperative itself. In the case of La Borda, it's pellets. Here it's with geothermia, and we applied this prefabricated clay radiating walls. So instead of having radiating floors, the heating is in these clay walls that have a very nice finishing as well. This is another project that now it's under development called Sotrak. In this case, it's quite similar to La Borda, and actually it's in the same premises of Can Batlló, and both this project and the other one come from the competitions that the municipality was doing. So both are, La Palma and Sotrak are public land. In this case, it was a group of people who were in the waiting list of La Borda that applied for this land and got it. They are very happy now because last month there was an event that allowed them to finally get access to the land, because there was a 2-year period that there was a bureaucratic problem, and they were stopped of the transfer of the leasehold of the land. So this also happens in this type of projects, no? That there is moments. It's like a roller coaster. You get the land, but then you need the finance. You get the finance, but then you need the construction permit. So the groups face a lot of problems, but then they overcome it, and this process helps to bond, to make a very cohesive group. Here, the piece of land was in a very weird shape, as you see, so we had to accommodate to this, but many of the strategies follow the principles of La Borda in terms of there's a smaller courtyard here that works a little bit different. We also worked on the less hierarchical and more flexible layout. Here, what we added as an innovation, there's 2 typologies that are a little bit different from previous projects. One of them is the satellite rooms, and another is the clusters. So the idea is that we try to make a little some typologies that share more in common with some of the units, some of the households, not the entire community. So that's what we have for the clusters. So there is one of the floors that units are a little bit smaller than maybe the rest of the building, but because they have smaller kitchens and they share only among the people from the floor a bigger kitchen and a bigger living room and dining room, no? So in this project, it didn't go that far, but in other projects that we are doing now, even the units are way smaller. In this case, the units are still somewhere in between. The idea is to, especially for people who want to live alone, but sharing with some other people, but not with a whole community, that can be overwhelming. And then what you see here in green is that in some of the floors, there's also these satellite rooms that are owned or are attached to one of the units, but they are not connected directly physically. The right of using these rooms belongs only to one of the housing units, but they are physically separated. So, for instance, it's very useful for co-working spaces, no, maybe 2 units can share one of these rooms for people who work from home, but they don't want to do it in the living room of their house because they have children or whatever. Or in some cases, for instance, with families that are changing, like we have one case of a woman who lives with her child and her mother. So now she lives in her unit with her child. The mother is going to live in one of these rooms that has also a bathroom. And she goes to their unit to eat. But in the future, if the mother is not anymore there, she doesn't need the room anymore, so she can liberate it for anyone else in the community. Or if the mother needs more care, she can go to the main unit, and the child who's a teenager can move with more independence to this other room. So it gives a little bit more of flexibility than the rooms I was showing you before in Laborda that can transfer, but can only transfer from units that are side by side. This also, we see this also in Empriu, another project we are doing also in the premises of Cambaggio. And then the last, I think the last two projects that I wanted to show are La Morada. Just to mention, this is a project that it's under construction now. It's a project that it's only dedicated to women and or queer people that wanted to live as a community. In this case, it's private land, but it's very funny because it's side by side by another cooperative housing project that is already existing in a public land. Here, we also wanted to work with wood construction, but it was designed in a moment when the wood material prices went like skyrocketed very fast. They went super expensive very quick. So for affordability reasons, unfortunately, we had to go back to concrete. Anyway, we always try to use it as less as possible, and to then use as wise as possible the performance of the concrete in terms of inertia, and to use it in our favor, knowing that it's a material that it's not as sustainable as we would like. There's another project that is also under construction. This will be finished in a few months. It's called La Raval, and it's in a smaller city, 50,000 inhabitants, 1 hour north of Barcelona. This is also public land. Here, it's in the city center, and it's a neighborhood it's been seeing a lot of decay the last decades. A lot of people leaving, there's been losing population, and the municipality wanted to change a little bit the spirit of the neighborhood, and they wanted to attract new residents. So they made a bid with the cooperative housing, and this group won the project. So just to show you also that it's not something done in very urban. Actually, we have there's projects also in completely rural farmhouse areas. And just to finish also, well, we have different books. This one is on cooperative housing. Unfortunately, it's only in Spanish, but we have other books or other publications, and some of them are in English, and most of them are available to download for free. I really recommend you, if you're interested in the cooperative housing model, to go to La Dinamo's website. This is the foundation that we helped to create with others, that now is giving advice to other cooperatives or groups, or even municipalities, or lobbying with the government to give more support. So some of the work that we've been doing also is not only architecture, but also helping to make these processes more easy to understand for people, to get more resources from from the municipalities or governments to try to lobby for legal changes, no, like the one I showed you from the parking requirements, but we also managed to change all the laws regarding the minimum square meters of the units. No, a couple of years ago there was a new law that allow us to count the square meters of the communal spaces as part of a house, no, because before they were counted as something else, so they could not be eligible for social housing funds, for instance, all these square meters, or they could not be counted as part of the house in terms of minimum square footage requirements, no? So part of the work that we do is related to this. And now also part of the work that we do in LACOL is related to project management and construction management, supporting and advising the groups to making these developments, because it can be very overwhelming, no? Like a group that most of the cases probably has never done even a renovation of their house. Now they have to take care of a 3, 4, 5 million euros development and take decisions related to construction companies, the permits, the architectural design, the loans, no? So we also now give support to all these things. That was all I had to share, because I know that there's a lot of things that I mentioned, and I know that sometimes can be overwhelming. So I really wanted to give enough space for the Q&A.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it was very interesting, and also arising more questions, starting from how gathering people together into such projects. As you mentioned, for example, Laborda started with a small group of people, and how they get involved others. It was an open call, or what was the process of bringing together these inhabitants of Laborda?
Yeah, in the case of Laborda, it was a small group of people that came from this community space in Can Batlló, like a social kind of a social center, and from there they did a process which is similar to what we do in most of the cases. Normally, a smaller group of people start and they have like a small idea of what they want to do, no, like in which neighborhood they want to live, if they want to live more or less in a communal sense, if they want to share more or less, if they want to be super sustainable or not. And then we help them to get access to land, to acquire the land or the building, or to get it with a tender from the government. And the moment that they get the land is the moment that they make an open call saying, this is the project, not the briefing that we have, this is the place. Now we know if we can host 15 units or 20 units, no? Because if you start with a big group and then you have a smaller place, how do you decide who moves in or not? But also it's very complicated to start a participatory process with a big group, because maybe it's not clear the main ideas, no? And maybe people have very different ambitions on different topics. So normally what we advise people is to start with 5, 6, 10 maximum units, families, people that make a small briefing on what they imagine, and once they get some idea that they can get a land, they can make an open call and ask for the rest of the people to join, and then people join already knowing where they are committing, what they are committing, no? Because otherwise we see a lot of disappointment, a lot of turnover, a lot of people who joins and then leave because they have different expectations. So all this social management, and when people joins the project, it's actually a very crucial thing.
Thank you. Mate, are you with us?
Yes.
Sorry.
So yeah, thanks, Carlos, for the lecture. I think we found out a lot of interesting things about practical experience while designing it. So it's very nice to hear first-hand perspective. My impression is that not only design skills, as we usually taught in university, but the soft skills are extremely important in such a work. Maybe small questions from me before moving to the audience. How important is education of the audience and the future clients in your case? Because my impression is that the possibility to implement cooperative housing should be introduced somehow to the wider audience, and it's quite a big work. So architecture criticism, writing about your project, does it help in the future projects? Or
yeah, no, it's crucial, no, this education. And actually we work a lot in, before also we work a lot in citizen participation projects with the municipality. I don't know, they wanted to renovate a square or a library, then we work with the community. And for us, all this participation has to go always hand by hand with transfer of knowledge. You know, if you just go and ask people what they want, they will repeat maybe mistakes very that we have very unconscious, no, like some biases and some things that we take for granted, no, like if we ask people how they imagine collective housing, obviously they will repeat the collective housing models that where they have been living for 30, 40, 50 years, no. So first, for us, we need to transfer all this knowledge, no. So all the sessions that we do with the communities, they always start with some sort of presentation or visiting other projects, so we can give all the information. Then people can decide, okay, I know now, but I don't want it. I really just want to go to conventional housing. I'm fine. And this is also fine. Like, people should have the right to decide, and people are experts on what they want and how they want to live, you know. So we should trust that. But for us, it has to go hand by hand with some knowledge transfer, because otherwise we risk to repeat the same mistakes. So this is something that we do a lot. That's why also we in La Borda, people understood very wisely that it's important to be open and to host as much visits as possible, even if sometimes it gets some conflict, because it's also very different when I'm explaining it to you with a PowerPoint presentation, while you go there and you experience it and you see it. The feelings that you get are very different. Here also there's been done a lot of pedagogy from La Dinamo Foundation and bigger cooperatives, other cooperatives, especially one called Sostre Civic, which is the one that we did the project of Poblenou, the one with the red wooden blinds. This is a bigger cooperative that they've been for many years also doing a lot of pedagogy, creating a lot of documents on what is cooperative housing, how to manage cooperative housing. So I think we also need to still here do a lot of pedagogy on that sense. And something else that we are doing is that we see a lot of interest in our projects, but normally people approaches you for one thing, no, like for instance with a wooden construction. So we got a lot of attention because of being the tallest wooden construction in Spain. But when people came to us asking for that, we always explain them the whole picture, no, like, yeah, there is the wood, but there's also the cooperative non-speculative thing, but there's also the co-housing sharing spaces thing. And the other way around, when people came to us because they were interested only in the cooperative model, we said, yeah, this is, I'll explain you that. But take in mind also that we need to be sustainable and we need to do, so it's also, we also try to be strategic on when people approaches us because they have one specific interest, to try to broaden a little bit the mindset and to stress that all these things together need to work combined, especially, for instance, with communal spaces. Like some developers now, they try to incorporate communal spaces into their projects because it looks cool, but if there is no social work behind that, if there is no a little bit strong community that knows how to handle conflicts and how to handle certain things, well, it can be tricky to have a communal dining room and kitchen if you don't have a place to discuss how to use this and what happens if somebody is not using it right. We know that this can be a source of conflict in a conventional communal collective housing. So we always try to sell the whole picture because it's very easy to fall in love with one specific thing and try to replicate and then mess it a little bit.
And what about educating legal institutions or politicians? Because I think that might be also a tricky part. In Lithuania, we have regulations regarding parking spaces for housing, and it sometimes makes a lot of difficulties, and it's impossible to avoid, I think, that requirement to have minimum amount of such and such.
Yeah, here, well, I think in many cases we succeeded. In the cases that we succeeded, because in some others they are still on the waiting list to be solved. I think we managed to partner with the political parties that we knew that they will be in favor, and trying to convince them with their own things. So maybe for us, the parking requirements was very important for the economic point of view, because this would make the project more feasible, also from the sustainability aspect because of CO2 emissions and so on. But actually, I think we convinced the political parties because we discussed also like the bigger picture, like the city of Barcelona has a plan of reducing the number of cars, so it goes against the subsidizing parking, which was what we were doing. We were making it easier for people to own a car. So this was going against the same principles that the city was trying to apply, and I think this helped. There was one political party that was key to get the votes, and I think we managed to convince them because we proved that this was going against the same things that they were voting in another law. So it's always tricky also because some of these laws, for instance, the one related to the reducing the square meters when you have communal spaces, the minimum requirements, it's very, I mean, we can use them very wisely and use them in a way that helps people who know what they're doing and who are using it in a good way, and to make a good use of this type of laws. But sometimes the governments, and we understand that, are afraid that this can go in the wrong direction. And if you've been discussing on minimum houses, we see that how this can be used by for-profit developers to make just tiny houses to make more money, not just because people want to share, and in another with another philosophy, and they are fine with smaller units because they have spaces to share, but just to put more units and to make more profit out of it, regardless if it's what really people want. So here is where sometimes we find it more difficult, because they say, yeah, we understand you, but so we always have to find measures how to make these changes without losing any right no? So here is where it's more complicated. Or sometimes, for instance, now we're also fighting with electric companies for making some changes that will favor housing cooperative, but will make them lose benefits. So we are not fighting the government or the political parties. We're fighting against bigger corporations. So here we haven't solved it as we would like it yet.
Yeah, but still, it's good that you could discuss and have some flexibility. In Lithuania, maybe municipality is convinced, but then we have legal requirements for the whole country, and it's very tricky to change something with this part. But I can see that audience listening to this lecture has some questions. So if you have any, raise your hand or simply voice your question or write it in the comments. And I already can see that Renata wants to join. Yeah.
Hello, thank you for a very interesting presentation. I'm really curious how widespread this movement of cooperative housing is in Spain. Are there a lot of companies like yours that help people to build their communal houses?
We think there's a combination of factors. First of all, that Spain has always had a problem of access to housing. Now it's very, very harsh, but before it's been always there. So in cities, I would say this is the biggest explanation of people having interest on that, because they see as an alternative and also as an alternative of way of living that the market or even the public sector was not offering. In rural areas where there's less pressure on that, there's also what we see in Spain is that the rural areas are losing a lot of population. So because especially there is no job opportunities and so on. So the projects that we see in rural areas, many of the times it's like young people that buy a big farmhouse and then they not only have a housing project, but also a working project. So some of them will work the land, or some of them will open small hotel, so that there's also an economic activity there, and they get also a lot of support from the community because they see this is only an opportunity for the area to attract some investment as well. And then in cities like in Barcelona or the places in Spain that we saw a little bit more of success, it was also because there was support from the municipality. So in Barcelona, the first two projects, La Borda and Princesa, the pilot projects, they were actually, the land was given by a conservative government, but then just right after there was a shift to the left government that we had for 8 years, and they were the ones who implemented more this as a public policy to give support to these projects, and this also helped that the interest also matched with the possibilities. Now we just had elections 2 weeks ago and they lost, so now we're in a moment we don't know. Probably what would happen is that the previous conservative government will go back again. In the previous time they supported cooperative housing, we're still pending on what's going to happen. And then on what you were asking also, there's now more and more technical support as well of people prepared for that. So not only architects, but also economists, lawyers who are specializing on that. And we think this is also key, because obviously you could do this project with any other architect or any other lawyer or any other economist, but it's not all professionals are prepared to have a client who's not one person, but maybe 60. And how to deal with that is not so easy. And also maybe they don't have all the knowledge on all the references and all the thinking on what are the important things on these projects, how to work with the different, like affordability, sustainability, collective spaces, all these things to work with them, well, you better have some experience to get best results, no? So the good thing is that most of these professionals, we are also normally cooperatives, so we are also in the mood, and we are also we also have like a federation where we can work together, transfer knowledge, do some projects together, and lobby the government as well. So there, I think it's still small because it's not, as you saw, it's not a super big sector, but I think it's growing in a good direction and very strong.
Okay. Any other questions? If you don't want to voice, yeah.
I would like to ask, you mentioned that the inhabitants of this cooperative housing are not allowed to inherit, how to say, the unit. How this process is going on? Like someone is dying, dead, and what's happening with the unit?
That normally depends on the cooperative. Like the law doesn't stop you to do so, but normally it's the cooperative who decides. And so far, as I know, all the cooperatives have decided not to give the right to inherit unless you are already living in the building. So you inherit the initial down payment. You receive the money that you put up front. I didn't went through that, but in these projects, the families or the people living there, they have to put some sort of kind of deposit that can be small or big, depending on if it's public or private land, the size, and so on. And this money, you get it back if you leave, or the people who inherit, they get this money. But it was decided by the communities, by the cooperatives, not to give this right of inherit the use, because at the end, normally the most of the cooperatives, they have now a more sophisticated process of letting people in. The beginning, it was more like an open waiting list, but the cooperatives saw that this could be dangerous, because at the end, maybe somebody who's not 100% understanding the model, or maybe somebody that can cause a lot of conflict in the project, or maybe just, for instance, imagine in 20 years nobody has left La Borda and there's an opening. The composition will be a lot of elderly people, so maybe you want to favor a young person to move in. So most of the cooperatives now, they have some process of this decision on who moves in, and they wanted to control that, and not that maybe somebody who has never even thought about cooperative housing suddenly inherits the right to live there, and maybe they are not in the same values that their parents had. So this depends on the cooperatives, but as far as I know, this is where most of the people decided. It's different. We saw it's different in other countries, but we went for that.
Renata has one more question.
Yeah, if I may, I don't want to dominate the space, but I'm really curious. Actually, I'm not from architecture, and I'm curious in some psychological aspects. As you mentioned, you live in such community, yeah, in such cooperative housing. What are main challenges living in that place, space, community? Difficulties, maybe.
Yeah, I normally I mention it, but sometimes I forget. I live in La Borda as well, so I most of the times I speak also as a user. So what we saw as one of the main challenges of this model is that it's time demanding. So it was you had to invest a lot of time doing the development. And we thought, okay, once we move in, we can relax, but there's always decisions to be taken. Like now we had an opening, so we had to decide who moves in, or there's things to improve. There's news that come that make you change things. So we have a monthly meeting and everybody has to be in one committee. So, and then you also have to, we also do the cleaning together. So you have shifts of cleaning. So now when we had an opening of a house, we were very serious in saying, if you want to move in, you need time. If you don't have time, maybe it's not your project, because you really have to, there's no somebody else managing this. We are all doing it, and we don't want to do it for you. So you have to be part of it. So this is one of the challenges. Then also we saw that we needed now to adjust a little bit the expectations, because everybody, before moving in, everybody had in mind what they imagined, but this not always matches, no? And so I think people had to adjust a little bit on some people envision it to be way more communal, where we shared a lot of things, and some others, they were happy just eating once a week together, no? So I think some people had to adjust to reality. And to me, these were two of the main challenges. Then there's conflicts, but we have one of the commissions who is in charge of conviviality, so the communal spaces and the conflicts. And so far, we've been able to managing this. Another, I'm thinking now also in another challenge that we face is there's always this fight between the individual and the community, no? And a lot of people, we have also different approaches in demanding our individual needs, no? So for instance, when there was this vacant apartment, there was different people who wanted inside of the community, no? So dealing with the individual needs and without creating new conflicts, this is always challenging as well, but so far we survived.
Thank you. It was very interesting to hear.
Heather raised the hand.
Yes. Architects won't forgive me if I wouldn't ask you concerning question concerning the aesthetics. As maybe you have heard that Patrick Schumacher announced that Venice Biennale of Architecture is not anymore architectural. So did inhabitants of your cooperative housings have any preferences concerning aesthetics, and how do you deal with it?
Yeah, that was an interesting thing. Here we have only got, from the professional side, we only got one critic writing an article saying that was really, to me, was really shocking, because he was saying that we did an ugly building in purpose, which it's I think it's a minority opinion, and the most crazy thing is that he's a very well-known critic from Barcelona. He lives in Barcelona, and he wrote that without even visiting the building. So I wouldn't give him much credit. Besides that, it was very interesting, because when we moved in, it was in winter, and the first weeks, all the comments that we received from the community, they were related to comfort. Like, I really like living here. It's very comfortable. It's very heated. It's the ceilings. They were more related to enjoying the building, and none about the aesthetics. We were a little bit afraid of certain things, no, because most of the things were decided by especially economic reasons. Like, I don't know, a lot of the plumbing and things are exposed for economic reasons, also for maintenance. But people is not used to that. We are used to heating all the facilities, no, and all the services, and no comments were referred to that, either positive or negative. The interior patio gets a lot of positive comments because we expose the wood as much as possible, and the lighting and everything. The Korea is very nice. The southern facade gets also a lot of positive comments because of the wooden blinds and everything. The interiors also because of these high ceilings we have. We have 303 high ceilings. The only thing that sometimes got, even from the inhabitants, more critics was the northern facade that you saw, the street facade, but there, because it was on a sustainability point of view, that we had to go for closing as much as possible, and then for economic reasons we had to go for the metal shed and the polycarbonate, and it's not that receives negative comments, but people doesn't see it as a housing. And even when you see people standing by, there's a lot of people who stops and look, and I always try to hear what they say, and they are always confused because they see the polycarbonate that behind has the big multi-purpose room with the children toys. So they always wonder, like, is this a high school? Because it doesn't look like housing, but just they see the windows, and then it's not that they see exactly, but they say this doesn't look like housing. But for the tenants, this was the only thing that we had some discussion. The rest, they were happy with it, and the comments were more not that this is ugly, this doesn't look housing. So, well, that's fair enough.
So our time is.
May I just one technical question? Carlos, you talked about heating that you do not have because of this system. The building, it heats itself, and still comfortable temperature during winter time. But what about heat waves during summertime? Do you have any cooling system? How you are solving this problem?
No, so we do have heating, but most of the units don't use it. In terms of summer, so the strategy, or the passive strategy that we have, is that the idea is that you close your house during the day because it's more hot outside than inside. We encourage, in the case of La Borda, we encourage people to put fan ceilings, and in other projects we are installing them from the beginning because they really work on helping you with sense of comfort inside. And then the idea is that at night you open, there is cross ventilation, we cool down the houses, and then even if normally it's wood construction, we always add in the floor a layer of concrete to have the finishing. It's a polished concrete, so it's already the finishing, and it gives us some inertia. Problem is, the first years it worked well enough. Last summer we had this heat wave, and the problem was that it didn't cool down at night. At night we were at 28 degrees. So this gave us a very a tricky situation because we started the day very high. In La Borda, this is not the discussion so far. In the case of our office that I showed you at the beginning, we follow the same principles, and now we are discussing adding some cooling in summer. Probably the good thing is that it's going to be a very small cooling. Now we have heating, and the heating for the entire building where 100 people work, it's a domestic heating because the building is very well isolated and very well performing in a passive way. So for us, this is the first thing to do. But it's true that if the climate goes in the direction that we have more and more weeks of what we call tropical nights, the passive measures will not work. So we will have to add some cooling to find comfort. Thing is that before it used to be 2-3 days a year. So our mentality was, okay, if it's only 3 days away, 3 days a year that you are uncomfortable, maybe you can deal with that. But if it's 2 weeks a year or 3 weeks a year that you have, like I think last year we had like 20 nights of tropical nights in Barcelona. This is challenging, and we are discussing it with other architects that we work with in terms of sustainability to see how we can face that, and it's the challenge that we are facing now.
Yeah, we have one more question about fire protection requirements. So what were the challenges to deal with fire protection restrictions, and how the issue with wooden structure was solved due to this aspect? Because now in Lithuania we also have those first projects with laminated wood offices and housing, and there is a lot of questions about that locally as well.
Yeah, it wasn't that much problematic as you might think. The biggest problem we have with wood is in terms of acoustics, because the wood is very light, and then we use these big panels. So now we have, after 3 years or so, we have a super strict acoustic regulation. So we have to prove that there is no transfer of sound between apartments, and with wood it's super difficult. So we have to add a lot of extra layers and things that absorb the acoustics. So this is increasing a little bit the cost in terms of wood construction. In terms of fire, here in Spain, the code asks for all kinds of materials. They only ask you for time resistance, for the fireman to come. In La Borda, I think it was 90 minutes. And doesn't matter, you have to prove that the building stands for 90 minutes. And the good thing with wood is that we know very well how it burns. So we have 2 strategies. Either we add extra layers. For instance, in the interior units, we have drywalls that help us with acoustics, but also help us with fire. So it is the drywalls that give us 90 minutes, the plaster boards give us 90 minutes resistance, so that the fire doesn't get to the wood. In other places or in other projects, we also work with adding extra depth of wood. So we know that the wood burns, now I cannot remember, I always forget, but it's like, I don't know, 3 millimeters every hour. So we only add 5 millimeters extra wood. And if there's a fire for 90 minutes, this wood can burn, and doesn't matter, because the inside core is still standing, which is very different from metal. In metal, if there's heat, it melts. It doesn't matter that doesn't have the fire. In the wood, the core is still standing. And also something that is very counterintuitive as well is that wood doesn't burn that easily. If you think when you go to countryside house and you try to make to lighten the fire, you need to start with small chips and small leaves and whatever. You can put like a big fire into a big log or into this wood, and you can be there for 10 minutes and it doesn't light because the fire protects itself when there's a lot of mass. So we had a lot of firemen coming to the building because it was the biggest building of the time, and they were very curious, and they were fine. They were giving us more problems with the greenhouse and the plastic and than the wood. And now we're facing more problems with the acoustics than with fire. But I guess it depends on the national, how they define, how they make you prove that the building stands.
Mm. Maybe the last question from my side, if that's okay. Quick one, because you mentioned different shared spaces like patios, kitchens, that washing machine area, and I can imagine that in different projects composition might be different and priorities might be different, but which space is the essential one for such projects? Is there one which must be included every time?
I would say that one one big kitchen and one big living room, it's key, because when the images that are most shown of La Borda is this big communal space, but this big communal space is very hard to control because it's impossible to heat because it's open. It's very noisy from the street, so it's very beautiful, but it's not the most used. The living room instead gives you a lot of opportunities to make. There's people who does yoga. There's people who make movie things, because you can close, you can make noise. So I would say that these not super beautiful big spaces, but actually more controlled spaces. Also spaces where you can cook, because cooking there's a lot of studies that show that cooking together creates a lot of connections. No, and here in Spain we have a lot of, we make paellas, we make a lot of big communal meals. No, and cooking with others, buying the food with others, sharing the food with others creates a lot of community. So this is for me one essential. And as I mentioned before, the guest rooms are very popular and I think very wise facility to have as well. They don't create this community thing. If you want a community, the kitchen definitely is one. But they are very, very useful especially for people that are migrants, that come from other places, and they can receive better their relatives and their friends and so on.
So thank you a lot for all your knowledge you shared with us today. Thanks everybody who participated. Thanks for Aida for organizing the whole series. I think you will have the possibility to find a recording of the lecture on the Architecture Quality Development Association YouTube channel. I think I should mention that the lecture series is organized by Association for the Development of Architectural Quality and funded by Lithuanian Council of Culture, and partner is the magazine Statyba ir Architektūra. So I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you all of you for staying all the
Thank you.
hours.
Thank you. And I'm still paskutinį žodį, switching to Lithuanian. Paskutinis žodis tai yra paskutinė mūsų ciklo paskaita, bet ne paskutinė organizuojama birželį. Kviečiame birželio gale visus architektus prisijungti prie kvalifikacijos tobulinimo kursų. Tai yra Viltė Janušauskaitė papasakos apie urbanistinio paveldo apsaugos Lietuvoje istoriją. Žiauriai įdomi, tiršta žinių paskaita. Kviečiame registruotis ir dalyvauti, ir tada iki kitų susitikimų. Ačiū.